The Hook, first 30 seconds, November 17, 1967. A young soldier sworn to protect his country sits strapped into a padded chair inside a sterile observation room. The clock on the wall ticks with unnatural slowness. He was told this was a routine stress test, a measure of his resilience under pressure. But the syringe plunged into his arm contained not saline, but a powerful, mind-altering chemical administered by men wearing the insignia of the U.S. Army Chemical Corps. They called it Subproject 43. What they were truly measuring wasn't resilience, it was the breaking point of the human mind, all under the banner of studying mind control. The real question is, how many other men were trapped in this labyrinth, and what did the CIA truly hope to gain by destroying the very soldiers they were sworn to protect? Narrative pacing. Chapter 1. The Green Light. The Edgewood Arsenal, a sprawling complex in Maryland, was supposed to be a place of chemical defense, a fortress against biological warfare. But between 1948 and 1975, this ground became a testing facility for something far more insidious: behavioral modification. The mandate flowed from the highest levels of intelligence, the ongoing, secret quest born from the Cold War paranoia, how to weaponize consciousness itself. This research was formalized under the immense umbrella known only as MK-Ultra. The pursuit of mind control wasn't limited to the CIA's notorious bordellos in San Francisco, where Operation Midnight Climax saw agents watching unwitting patrons on hidden cameras. At Edgewood, the U.S. Army adopted a more direct approach, using its own personnel as human guinea pigs. They were testing everything: LSD, THC, the incapacitating agent BZ, any neurological agent that promised a tactical advantage. The framework tightened around 1965 with the initiation of MK-Ultra, a joint project between the Army Chemical Corps and implicitly the intelligence apparatus. The goal was to quantify the chaos. Behavioral responses were tracked using standardized observation scales to measure alterations in aggression, compliance, and sensory perception. If we were scared enough of a drug not to try it ourselves, the chilling testimony goes, we sent it straight to San Francisco. But here, they didn't send it away, they injected it. Narrative pacing. Chapter 2. The Unwitting Test Subject. Imagine the scene, the sterile observation room dissolving into a kaleidoscope of terror. The subject, unable to distinguish reality from the chemical nightmare induced by the dosage, tries to communicate. He attempts to ask when the effects will stop, but the words catch in his throat, distorted by the drug's grip. His handlers, watching behind reinforced glass, are not doctors treating a patient. They are technicians observing machinery under stress. There are no formal consent forms. That legal loophole that exempted military personnel from informed consent for these types of studies was wide open, allowing the ethical guardrails to collapse entirely. The records, though fragmented, suggest hundreds of Americans cycled through this process. They signed papers for stress testing or vaccine efficacy trials, never knowing they were being dosed with substances designed to shatter their internal reality. The data collected was vital to the broader MK search program, designed to understand the limits of human control.
What were the precise casualty figures related to this psychological testing? That number remains buried, obscured by redacted reports and decades of institutional secrecy. The agents documenting the trials noted minute changes, increased suggestibility, altered time perception. They diligently recorded every tremor, every paranoid delusion. But what happened when the drug wore off and the subject returned to duty? The whispers began echoing through the barracks in the mid-1970s. Soldiers reporting crippling anxiety, memory loss, and hallucinations years after their service. The men who emerged felt fundamentally broken, strangers in their own bodies. Narrative pacing. Chapter 3. The Cover-Up and the Silence.
When health claims finally surfaced, the government responded with denial, followed by bureaucracy. It wasn't until 1982 that the Institute of Medicine finally published a multi-volume report on the Edgewood research, a slow, methodical attempt to catalog the damage. Yet, even this official acknowledgement provided little comfort or compensation to those afflicted. Consider the legal afterlife of these victims. As recently as 2005, a judge dismissed a case brought by an alleged victim, citing insufficient proof of causation, the impossible task of definitively linking a specific dose of an untested drug 20 years prior to present-day psychological trauma. The paper trail was deliberately thin, designed to sever the connection between the test and the suffering. What was the ultimate finding of the internal investigations that shadowed this project? We are left only with the vague admission from the agency's former top chemist, Sidney Gottlieb, speaking about LSD testing generally. The CIA experienced as many failures as successes in exploring intelligence applications. Failures for the agency meant devastation for the subjects. The knowledge gap remains wide. What precise legal mechanism allowed the military to subject its personnel to these profound violations without penalty? Narrative pacing. Chapter 4. The reality of Subproject 43. Let us return to that padded chair, to the moment the chemical takes hold. The soldier is no longer a soldier. He is an object of study. The LSD, perhaps laced with other compounds, rips apart his cognitive framework. The focus of Subproject 43, explicitly detailed in documents dating back to 1955, was the study of involuntary compliance. Could a subject, under the influence of a powerful hallucinogen, be compelled to act against his core programming? Could his will be overwritten? The project often utilized non-psychoactive isomers created during the LSD synthesis process, substances that could be separated by chromatography and then later isomerized back into the active drug, ensuring a steady, untraceable supply. Every flicker of the eyes, every shift in posture was logged, an entry into a terrifying database of compromised human potential. The data was about control, about ensuring that if an enemy ever developed a similar technology, the US military would know how to defend against it, or perhaps how to deploy it first. The irony stings. These men were exposed to the very agents they were trained to neutralize. They were sacrificed on the altar of national security research, their minds becoming the battleground for a war that never officially existed. The electronic whine of the monitoring equipment in the adjoining room was the soundtrack to their psychological dismantling. The climax and resolution. The central mystery of Subproject 43 is not what they tested, but the sheer impunity with which they tested it on their own people. The answer lies in the complete subjugation of the soldiers' rights to the perceived urgency of the intelligence imperative. In the shadows of the Cold War, the government decided that the value of potential knowledge about mind control outweighed the fundamental human right to bodily autonomy and mental integrity for a select few in uniform. The program stopped, not because of a moral awakening, but because the public exposure of MK Ultra in the mid-1970s forced the curtain shut. But the echoes remain in the lives of those veterans who still wrestle with paranoia, chronic disorientation, and memories that feel chemically implanted rather than organically lived. The full roster of those dosed, the extent of the long-term damage, the specific casualty figures, that remains the final, locked file. The men in the chairs at Edgewood Arsenal weren't trying to control an enemy. They were the collateral damage in the US government's secret war against the human mind itself.